various points and at the very end. Let's go ahead and do a roll call. Our board members are here except for Kristen Smallwood, correct? So Diane, Karen, and Raylene, right?
You got it right.
So with that, probably would like a motion to accept the minutes. Everybody got a chance to look at the minutes and review them?
I don't have that.
I don't have the minutes.
I'll pass them around, take a quick look.
Okay.
If you have any changes. There's a little bit on the back. Come on over. Okay, got a motion
second.
in a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The motion carries. Minutes are accepted. Just kind of review what we did last meeting very quickly. And correct me if I'm wrong on anything, just jump in. We basically agreed on pervious pavers, possibly with designs and or mosaics, an open middle area with landscaping around the outer perimeter, possibly raised. We talked a lot about raised inside a wall, similar to like the end of Minutemen, with tile, built out of tile or block, something very substantial and nice that is has openings, so there's lots of pedestrian ingress and egress, but also protective as well as for visual with low plants and some sort of shade trees as a possibility, or similar to the rain gardens. We didn't do that, but I think we were leaning towards doing those planters, and that would be on two sides. We also looked at the Kelly Slater statue being in the outer corner of the two roads, and then directly diagonally across, instead of at the flat at the corner, putting the stage, because the building committee came in and presented that they're taking a parking space originally, and that's going to be part of this park area, and so moving the stage into that corner, so the Kelly Slater and the stage are directly diametrically opposed on corners, so that actually gives a better visual of the park itself, instead of just being kind of, you know, here and here. It's going to be kind of angled. And then we also talked about those pavers. Having that design gives us a lot more opportunity with doing kind of muted colors in the pavers and some sort of a design. And then we also talked, overall the concept is to have the space, you know, available as part of downtown events, be it Friday Fest or other, but also to kind of also have it as sort of a quiet space for yoga classes, maybe movies, maybe some quieter music, not big giant bands, but kind of low-key things, just a quiet lunch once in a while on a bench under a tree in a shade tree. The other thing that we talked about was lighting, and we hadn't really come up with any kind of a design yet. And one of the things we were talking about doing at this meeting was possibly have somebody talk to us about landscape, what would be appropriate for those raised beds, what kind of trees or shade trees we could put in there that we could put in fairly mature, so we don't have to wait 20 years for them to grow, but yet would be functional. And then also looking at some of those kind of artsy lights that we were talking about as a potential as well, or other types of shade.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Please do.
Dr. Smallwood asked that she attend by phone, so I was going to call in.
Oh, good, okay. We were just talking about whether she was going to attend or not. Okay,
Just
good.
call her real quick. Apologize, I'm late too.
That's all right. So while she's doing that, did I kind of cover everything pretty much? And if I didn't, once we get Dr. Smallwood in, jump in there.
Like you did.
And then Walker's going to take over. I'll nudge him.
Is this Dr. Smallwood? Hey, how are you? I'm going to put you on speakerphone. I'm sitting in here in the task force. Hang on. All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
All right. Can
Hi,
everybody
Doc.
I just got the call was silenced, so
Okay.
I feel like it was a junk one, so sorry about that.
That's quite all right.
Okay, so Walker, please pick it up from there. We just kind of did an overview and we voted on the minutes, so.
Yep, okay, great. So I know where we left it off last time, everyone had inquired about bringing in a landscape architect. We weren't able to do that. We also talked internally at the city. It's probably a little bit premature to have a landscape architect involved. Wayne, do you want to add anything to that? Because Wayne is really the project manager on this particular project.
Sure. Wayne Caragino, City of Cocoa Beach, Assistant City Manager. I heard that you did want a landscape architect. A landscape architect will be involved with the project, but at this point in time, we don't have the time or the resources to bring somebody in at this point. They will decide, most likely it'll be Susan Hall, who's done pretty much, everything around here. So let me just recap where we're at right now. How about that? Can you guys want to hear my
Please.
little spiel? So the other committee, your sister committee, came up with 14 bullet point recommendations, which I have in an agenda item.
That
which-
being the City Hall Building Committee?
City Hall Building Committee.
Tim and
Yeah.
everybody.
So Tuesday, it'll be a commission meeting. That will be an agenda item. So what I need from this committee is your bullet points tonight. You have to wrap this up. This is your third meeting. This is your final meeting. I heard a lot of good ideas here. So what you have to do is tonight, get those into a bullet point type form, and I'll attach that to the agenda item. That will go to the commission on Tuesday, and the item is it's not an actionable item. It's a discuss type thing with the commission.
I can't hear anything.
That they just take all the bullet points and say, pass it on to the
I'll give you a
architect.
rundown in just a second.
So,
Can you do me a favor? And
The way it works is the architect,
background noise?
on a design build, you have three major players in a design build. The city, obviously, the general contractor is W&J, and W&J hires an architectural firm. In this case, it's Jacobs. So everything that you guys get together will be presented to them through the commission. And they'll take things like the trees that you're talking about, and Susan Hall will take your recommendations. So you guys have to kind of keep it at a higher level where they're just conceptual. This is all conceptual. And what we're getting into now is the nuts and bolts of actually designing this building. And nuts and bolts translates into dollar signs. So that's where we're at now. And they're actually reining this whole thing in already, and we haven't even really started to get into the pure design.
Yeah, and
But-
I think another thing a point that needs to be made is we have yet to get a guaranteed maximum price from W&J.
Right.
So once we kind of gel all of the ideas and say this is the vision and the direction we're going, they will go back and crunch numbers and say, okay, here's the guaranteed maximum price for the city for this,
Right.
what you're proposing.
Right, and they cannot do that until they have a plan set at 40%, 40% of design.
Right.
They'll come back with a preliminary GMP, and they'll go through every line of every subcontractor that they have and come up with a price. And that is, well, in simple terms, it's called a reality check. It's what it's going to cost you. And then hopefully we're, down where we don't have to start cutting, things out of the building. I'll give you an example. So the last big project we did like this was the police station. When we got the preliminary GMP, we realized we were over. We literally eliminated 25% of the third floor. There was a big room there, and that just was taken out of the project to rein it into an acceptable price. So it'll look somewhat like this, but we've already eliminated, so there's column rows.
Right.
We've already shrunk it down to eliminate a column row. Stuff like that's gonna go on.
Okay.
The materials that we use for certain things will be looked at. But things like the location of the Kelly Slater statue, higher level things like that, because we're paying this architect $863,000 to design the building. We want him to work for his money, and that's what we're paying him for. And I'm not belittling anything. You guys are giving them the tools that they can use to understand what the citizens want in the building. That's the higher level type thing here, And I always use it, and I hit you guys with the example too. When we just knocked the building down that was built in 1962. When they built that building, how much space did they allocate for the IT department? And the answer to that is none, because computers didn't even exist at the time. So, it's difficult to keep everything at that level, but that's kind of what we're asking you guys to do. So,
Good.
okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. And on that note, the April 18th meeting, that's 6 p.m. Tuesday next week? Or not next, is it?
6, I believe,
Yeah, 6 on Tuesday. Anybody that is on the Cultural Resource Task Force is welcome to come. You can submit public comment. It's probably going to be a really long meeting. We have a ton of different task force things and budget stuff that we're going to talk about in that meeting, but just to put that out there, anybody's welcome to come and speak.
Yeah, we're on that too.
E-bike thing, that's a hot topic.
It's going to be a ritual meeting.
Walker, could I just suggest, basically, we went through a summary
Yep.
of what we've talked about. Could I maybe try and help us just put these down into bullet points
Yep.
and see if we agree or not?
Absolutely.
Can I give you the
Yeah.
visuals so maybe we can talk off of those a little bit? Because I'm a visual person and it helps me understand.
Yeah.
So the first page is something with the planting beds on the outside, like what we were talking about before.
Exactly.
With the pedestrian walkway inside. And what I liked about this particular one is the way they controlled the access to the green space using the outside raised planter beds
Right.
like we talked about, and then using whatever these,
Bollards.
the bollards.
Yep.
And also, if you look, they changed the design of their pavers so that you could clearly see, that was an entrance.
Right.
And I think that's real important, being on that busy intersection, that we control where people are coming in and out of that space so that we're not jaywalking over
the
that
sidewalk.
entire
Yep.
road. And
So the
so,
bollards would be more or less at the corner and then around the edge. And what I was thinking, even though these are more straight, I was thinking where they'd be kind of odd, curvy, but almost overlapping. So when you're looking at it from the road, it doesn't look like an access point.
Right.
But if you're walking on the sidewalk, you walk in, you can see you walk around, and then in the corner itself, that would be a good spot for those bollards.
Right.
For folks to,
and it's high enough that people aren't walking through it and they're
Correct.
not able to walk through it. And then the other thing I think pretty strongly that the Kelly Slater statue needs to be pulled in as much as we can off of that corner, so that you actually
For
have to
accessibility.
be within the green space in order to be able
to be stand around, photo it, all
yeah,
that.
you're not there on
Next
that
to the
busy
road.
corner, and you're not able to vandalize it or anything, that it's pulled back into the green space within, whatever pedestrian area that we have. I liked this in that the trees don't have anything planted around them. The planting is back in the high beds, and the trees are just the trunks so that your sight line is clear through the
Yep.
space. And then that also would probably give you places where, if we were having a farmer's market or whatever, you don't have flower beds within the interior space that's going to keep you from being able to utilize the entire space. And this particular page, and I'm sorry you guys can't see it, but it's grass instead of pavers.
Right.
But the next page I saw one that was pavers, so that we could also kind of visualize whether it was grass or pavers, and depending on what kind of budget we have. But what I like about it is that the pedestrian walking area, the planter beds, everything is on the exterior of the lot, and the interior, whether it's pavers or grass, is open. So that and then I thought that we should have like some covered bench seating that's all facing the interior space, that interior open space. And there's all kinds of concepts for how you can do that, but I think whatever our covered seating is, that the stage band shell or whatever we have for the stage, it should coordinate. It doesn't
It'd
have to
match,
be
more or
exact,
less.
but it needs to be the
Right.
same. And then all of that needs to coordinate with whatever the architecture of the building
So
is.
stylistically, it all comes together, yes.
So it's a cohesive
Yep.
space.
Good.
Great recommendations.
Yeah.
Like further from last week, those are awesome.
Yeah.
I love the moving the statue back a little so you are in it for safety, where it's still a nice focal spot. That was awesome. I love that idea.
So let's figure out how to incorporate that into these bullet points
Okay.
that we've kind of already got.
I
And
wanted to mention something. I can't hear a lot of it. I can hear Tony really well, and I can hear Diane really well, but I really can't hear anybody else. So I don't know if I've missed some things, but I wanted, because I mentioned last time that maybe we would want to talk to Rockledge Design Studios, which is who did the astronaut statue across the, A1A from there. So I did speak with them, and Pat Pacifico, who's the owner, and they are currently doing a project for Daytona Beach, and they're doing shade structures, metal shade structures, which, it may be good to have some, permanent, solid structures, and they can easily do something along the concept that was in the catalog, which was the artistic umbrella kind of thing. But of course, we would need it to be solid, because that doesn't really give any true shade. And we also need to, that catalog is there, but I don't know that it's marine aluminum. So in order to have metal that isn't going to just go right away, we really need to have a nice heavy gauge marine aluminum. So I would hope that the city would at least consider, if they decide to do some kind of solid structure, umbrella, artistic type structure, to at least get, a local bid of somebody that's used to dealing with the salt and wind that we have. And we use the marine grade aluminum on the astronaut surfer. So.
Doc, this is Tony, if I could, just to help you out. And I had to do one of these by phone too, and you're only going to hear a portion of what goes on. But we heard what you said. It's going to be noted. And just to give you an update, Diane was showing us photos, which you'll get to see at some point, of structures that are shade/benches. Asked that they kind of conform into the style of the stage in the building as well. And then prior to that, Wayne Caragino, our assistant city manager, was speaking and basically kind of gave us where we're at. And this is all going to more or less, a lot of those details on Everything's going to come down to financial issues as well as the ultimate design based on the architect, the build and design folks, based on the information that kind of at the, probably more at the 50, 60,000 foot level than the 10,000 foot level. But we can certainly give them those key points and make sure that they're included in part of our wish list.
I think the umbrella, I sent him a picture of those umbrella type things saying that we would need it solid. And of course, he can't give us directly how much he was thinking, but he was thinking that to do the marine grade aluminum and the proper, that they probably would be around 15,000 a piece.
Okay, all right. Make sure that information gets to the city, probably to Walker, correct?
Yep.
Make sure it gets emailed to Walker, and so he can include it within our notes and minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
And I also have, he sent me he's just starting the Daytona Beach, but he did send me that too, so I can pass that along.
Okay, good.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. And hang in there with us.
I will, but I can't hear you, Tony, and I can hear Diane almost as good as I can hear you, but I really couldn't hear anybody else.
Okay, sorry. I was going to suggest, if I could, I was going to go up there and kind of point out some things.
Okay.
Just because it helps me visually, and see if we can get our bullet points down. You guys
Okay.
know, just jump in if I'm missing something or I get something wrong, okay?
Good.
Do me a favor and take Dr. Smallwood with you so she can hear you.
Okay. Doc, I'm bringing this phone with me, so hopefully you
And I'll
can
watch
hear
the
me
minutes,
as I'm
and
walking
I'll
up
finish
to
the minutes, but I'll do
Tomorrow.
visual aid here.
Tomorrow morning, if you want to just give me your notes and I'll couple them with mine. And
I'm
then,
just gonna make a note there for this one.
okay.
Everyone, keep that, and I'll add that onto the agenda.
She emailed this to me, so I have a copy of the
Okay.
visual.
Just so everybody knows, one of the things
Okay, thank
that the building design team shared with us last week was that this has altered a bit already. So this will be added to this. That won't be parking. And this, the stage, will end up over here on this corner. So based on that, what we talked about was putting the Kelly Slater statue on this corner, and I think we all are in agreement to set it back a little bit from the corner so it's in a safe area. And possibly, we'll get into the bollards and all that, but I think that's one bullet point. So we agree with what you all have done, Tim, setting this up at that corner going out instead of going that way. And with that, in support of that, putting the Kelly Slater on that corner.
Can I
and
also
making it safe.
suggest perhaps, and they'll have to look at it, if it could go on the other corner of the building as well, up near, if it can be more protected there. I think the best goal for the Kelly Slater statue is for it to be somewhere where it's the most protected, but still visible and still
Are you talking about
beautiful,
over here?
like over there, like to complement the stage on the other side, if they can do it where it's somehow covered
That would be
or.
the northwest corner of the park.
Yeah.
And the northeast corner of the building.
Yeah, I think the bigger goal, we want it to be aesthetically pretty, but we also want to make sure that it's protected as much as it can be. And I don't know if there's even a better spot where it can be, where it's not in the weather as much.
Right now, it's in the middle of A1A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, weather.
But it is degrading in the middle of A1A. And that's, we have a really harsh salt environment, and it is degrading there in the middle of A1A. So there's, I don't know if it can be under or
Honestly,
something.
I'm not sure there's anywhere we put it unless we put some barrier on the east side of it to protect from the salt coming on.
Uh-huh.
Probably not much
I think that oak tree is still gonna be kind of in that vicinity
Is
too.
it still
Yeah,
there?
they're gonna keep,
So
I
that
remember them saying they're
probably
gonna
won't-
keep
That is-
the oak tree.
That is
Yeah,
correct.
So that won't work
The one
there.
oak tree that's on the, I guess it would be the north side of the, right where the old commission chambers were, that will still be there. They're not
If we put it back there, it has a little bit more protection.
possibly.
Maybe.
I
But is
don't-
that where the garage doors are opening up too?
Yeah, it
for
may
the
not-
venues? It might be, you might be
Yeah.
staring at the backside of the,
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, Diane.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My preference would be here, but if you all want to move it back here, then.
I like it in the corner, but I do agree a ton with what you said about, because I know that there's general concern about like the safety of A1A and Minuteman but I think we all have been talking about this since the beginning about the raised beds and all that, but I
Yeah.
like the idea of it being pushed back a little bit on that corner
Right.
with something
We
in
could-
front kind of.
We could elevate it, if we do so if we, and we'll get into that as a bullet point in a minute, but if we end up with the elevated beds, whether they're curvy or straight, like those designs you have.
Yeah,
This could be set, it doesn't have to be set right there, it could be set inside, I've seen somewhere where, you know, it's almost like a separate area set back, you know, 10 or 15
Yeah.
feet, and then elevated like the elevated beds.
yeah,
So it all matches, it's protected from people, and it's also protecting the people.
yeah.
Should
It's
actually-
almost like a baseball diamond, the way we're looking at the
Right.
shape, and he's like home plate,
Home
Yeah.
base or third base.
Yeah.
That's the
Second.
diagonal. And it complements the other statue by the parking garage.
Yeah,
That
it
Small has
does.
been referencing, like
Okay.
across.
So
Yep.
we're good on that,
Good,
okay? And then, bullet point, basically pavers, not astroturf or grass. Some sort of pervious pavers, both to protect the environment, but also lower maintenance, is our, couple of our concerns, so that's a bullet point. And let's talk about the beds. Well, let's talk about the pavers. The pavers, I know Dr. Smallwood and we all sort of said either some maybe mosaics, designs, some possible subtle, you know, waves or rays coming out. We've got this angle, take advantage of it in an artistic way. From the stage going out this way, or either that or going from the statue going that way, but utilizing that. I know I'm picturing, you know, a couple, like two colors of pavers, very subtle differences, but enough that you can see it. And then Dr. Smallwood had talked about doing mosaics, and they could either be within the pavers themselves, or they could be on the planter walls too. I know I've seen some areas where they've actually done tile mosaics around. I know there's an expense item, but we've got artists in this town that know how to do things like that. And I bet we could find people that would be willing to do those, whether it's immediately or down the road. But, so the pavers, that's the one bullet point. The next one would be planters, basically on these two streets, on Minuteman and Atlantic, and basically not solid with openings for pedestrians, but designed with either bollards in the openings, or if they were curvy, to where they overlap a little bit, so it's not gonna draw people across the street jaywalking. And then this area here would definitely have bollards in the front. And if we did them straight, like the designs that you have in the drawings that we'll include in this, they would be openings, and obviously they wouldn't overlap, so there'd be bollards in between, both for safety of pedestrians and safety from traffic as well.
So real quick, just so I'm crystal clear, the perimeter planter beds we're talking about, so we are not talking about raised beds?
yes,
Yes.
we are.
We are talking about doing raised beds with,
Right.
Talking about-
Either like
Okay,
that,
okay.
or similar to, like the end of Minutemen, that kind of curvy one.
Yep.
And then incorporated either into them or in addition seating. And some, I know we've all seen them, raised beds made out of, concrete or blocks, and they've got built-in concrete solid benches. There's something like that, or where the lip around is seating, is capable of seating. Probably less desirable, only because it might get folks climbing up into them. But that's an option, or the other option is separate benches around those walls. Good on that? Is that clear, Walker, about what we're talking about, how to make, so they wouldn't be one solid wall, they'd be maybe like 3 or 4 here with some small openings, same thing along there. They'd either be straight through openings if it's, rectangular.
Right.
Or if it was curvy, they would overlap a bit so you could walk.
Yeah, almost
around.
like an angled way where you would kind of
Yeah.
weave your way through them. Yep, understood.
Whatever your traffic engineer would come up with
Yep.
for how you want to steer the pedestrians.
Right.
And then, for the planters themselves, if they're elevated, and that's our preference, they would be low ground cover and elevated trees. So basically, you could see clearly through or out or in, but ground covered, so there's greenery covering the whole bottom, low maintenance, preferably native of some sort, and then trees, and then that's what we were talking about last time, is some sort of fairly mature tree that we could plant so there'd be immediate shade, but the idea is shade trees, we all love palm trees, but I think we're in agreement, we prefer not to see palm trees in there. We'd rather see some sort of shade tree.
Single trunk tree.
Yes.
Single
So you can see it,
shade
it's
tree.
clear, it's sturdy.
I'm not sure that those planter beds need to be ground cover.
Might be a little bit helpful if we were to use some, because they do make that large palm frond that is horizontal. So there may be a place as an understory to a taller palm for the fall, fan palm, and maybe even like a not sago, the cooties. So we have the cooties on the streets now, but just fill in.
Okay, so that's, you all heard that? Okay, got it.
Tony, I'm not sure that those planter beds, those raised flower beds, have to be ground cover level. I mean, can't we have some higher?
Yeah, we could. I'm just thinking, depending on their height.
Yeah.
And that's certainly something we could do. I'm just thinking, I guess in my mind, I'm thinking ground cover because it's low maintenance and you don't have to do much. And no offense, Wayne, or Walker, the maintenance is an issue. We already see it in downtown now. I would love to see flowers and all kinds of stuff. I'm just concerned if they're going to be kept up. But I understand what
I
you're
want
saying.
them pretty.
Yeah.
Pretty, because that's what you're gonna see all the way around the perimeter, so they
And there are
need to be
some
attractive.
Great native flowers. I've seen them in the neighborhoods, the little new shop downtown can get them and knows what they are. So, I mean, we can put in there that we would prefer flowers if possible.
I just want them pretty, and I know everybody's pushing for native, I'm not pushing for native, just so it's on the record. I'm pushing for pretty.
I'm gonna dig in on non-invasive, but I'm okay with non-native. I prefer native. but-
I agree with you. I'm not, I think it would be nice to have some, I think,
Is native and it's sturdy. And
Yeah.
it's slow growing, so those are nice undercover ones. But definitely we cannot do invasive. But I'm okay with a combination of native and non-native because we just want it to be attractive, we want it to be shade, and we want it to be low maintenance.
yeah.
Okay, and everybody's nodding their heads.
We all
so
agree on that,
we
yeah.
all agree with that. Good?
Yep.
Okay. And then we do agree with, we want shade. We want shade trees. That's part of the idea is, be able to sit out there and have lunch and sit under a shade tree. It's just calming, and that's kind of, probably not a bad idea in downtown these days, so.
But we want our shade,
I think we may need some shade, permanent metal type shade where you might even be able to put some, picnic tables or something underneath that. That will be good even when it's raining.
Yeah, and Diane's photos, which you haven't seen, Doc, show that, so that's gonna be part of the thing. So let's make sure, bullet point, whatever the next bullet point is Diane's drawings be included as kind of an idea format that we agree with the structures. So benches of some sort and some kind of potentially a structure that could provide shade as well and protection if it's raining.
Great.
And then I think, just to add in there, since we're talking about structures, that bullet point that all the design and the structures coordinate with the building, the cover of the stage, everything is coordinated and works together and stylistically.
yes.
Let's see, there's shade trees, killing statue, band shell on the corner, raised planters. Bear with me, I'll read my notes here. So basically, just to be clear, and this could be a bullet point or not, but basically, we're looking at the middle area being fairly open for use for various things. And then the outer area being landscaped, maybe even layered like those designs that you've got, Diane. So there's layers of wall, walkway, maybe, and then trees, for example. The trees don't have to be in the planters. They could be separate from the planters like those designs, which actually looks kind of cool. And that could work as well. So that's the simple part. I don't know if we need to get into much more detail, and without having an architect or a landscape architect, it's kind of hard to do that. So is there anything you want to add? Anybody?
No.
Anything? Walker?
No, I think that's good. I just wanted to make sure I got everything. I'm looking through my notes from the last couple meetings. I think this is good. I mean, the task force has kind of honed in on a few consistent key items at each and every meeting, related to the pavers, to the shade trees. Obviously, the devil's in the details with the design, the layout. Are the beds rectangular? Are they, flowing? The mosaics.
Yeah, sorry, you're not going to be able to, sorry.
Yeah.
But we also made sure that all of this, in one way or another, whether they're light poles, ground, lighting, also irrigation is part of this. We just kind of assume everybody knows that, but irrigation, lighting, it could be ground lighting, up lighting, down lighting. We looked at various light poles that maybe have baskets, but we were concerned about the maintenance, but they could be artistic and fit in there as long as they, again, match the style of everything else, and it all works together, but they don't have to be that. It could be something else. But with that, Walker, if it's okay with you, this was probably a good time to get any public comment.
Yeah, agreed.
Do you need me up here?
No, not necessarily. So I love all your ideas. Kenny Wells with Cocoa Beach Main Street. I love all your ideas and making it pretty and things like that. When you talk about having events there, I don't see where you've made any concessions as far as a layout for vendors or electrical for events. And that's very important. If you run benches all throughout and planters and things like that, and there's no electric, then it really becomes a space that we can't use.
Good point. We
That is a
did
good point.
discuss that before, and that's a bullet point.
Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt and not to have a conversation, but yes, electrical outlets around for vendors. That was, thank you.
So there's electric now in the street poles, but there's one outlet with 2 plugs. So we need like 10 plugs in an area, not knowing how the setup's going to be or how we'll be able to place vendors. You know, if there's 4 or 5 in an area, they would need to plug into that pole. They all have at least 1 plug. So just keeping that on everyone's mind is much appreciated.
Thank you.
So out of curiosity now, so the spacing on the poles that they have,
Yeah.
when we do Friday Fest,
Yeah,
there's 2 outlets
horrible.
on each pole. Typically, based on the current spacing, you said you need 10 outlets per pole?
Yeah, it's horrible
It's-
because
it's
the
not
poles are
enough.
too
I'm one
far
of the
apart.
vendors, and it's a pain in the ass to plug in. You got to run wires 20 feet.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yep.
And it becomes a safety issue.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Just having those cords
Okay.
running everywhere. And they're not always working, the plugs aren't always working because they're outside.
Yep.
The elements, things like that.
Thank you, Kenny.
Yeah. Yeah?
You get some more stuff?
I don't think so.
I do.
Okay, go baby.
So I agree with the outlets, and I don't, however many we have, we can put them on the planter beds, something like that. But we've had an issue when we did the streetscape previously, what we have there. And the power was out immediately. I mean, 10 years ago. It's just really not good. So that needs to be, attention needs to be put on that.
Very professionally and thoughtfully done.
Yes. Another thing that really hasn't been talked about is the foresight of this area. Like you mentioned, like Wayne mentioned earlier about, hey, City Hall was built in '62, and they didn't plan on having an IT department or that as being taking up space. Well, what's going to happen in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years in downtown Cocoa Beach? Right now the streetscape is basically 10 years old, but it looks a lot older, and I'm concerned with that. And I was concerned with it when it was put in, that was going to happen. That if we don't maintain it, it's just going to look the same as it did. And we're close to that. It's not quite there yet. It's only been 10 years, but in another 10 years, if we just kept on and didn't do anything else, it would be. So we do have a lot of events going on. And whether it's Friday Fest, Mural Fest, art show especially, there's just a lot of different things happening and new things every year. In my mind, down the road, and this has been talked about before, about closing off Minutemen, not just for the weekend, but closing it off.
Sorry, I'm not supposed to comment.
And if that happens, that changes the whole dynamic there in that area. Now you can, this is pie in the sky, but it's foresight. It's something, hey, that this might happen, that this commission, the next commission, the 5th commission from now might want to do that. I don't know. But I know what hasn't been talked about at this meeting, that may or may not happen. But that's just kind of an idea. Hey, well, let's think about what's going on now. Currently, we have a streetscape, and it's one kind of design, and now we're putting in this new design, which is awesome. But what's it gonna look like? Is there a transition? We've got street lights with just kind of hovering out there. Is that going to conflict with the style here and the style there? The planter beds that are in the current streetscape all along the street, in my view, need to be filled in with pavers, pervious pavers or something so that it's walked through. It's a hazard for a lot of people that are walking through. They're going to be walking through there. When it's not blocked off, I get it. But during an event, that's just seems like a big hazard. So that, like I said, that hadn't been talked about.
We lost.
So I'm bringing up a lot of points. The oak tree that's out there, you said that isn't going to be taken down.
They're keeping it, apparently, yeah.
Keeping it from what we understand.
So that was decided by the city, Walker?
Yes, that was just, well, it was during the demolition of the building, they decided they wanted to keep the oak trees. That may be related to land development code and, trying to promote mature native trees. I don't know where the exact time that came in.
Because that's a big tree, and it sheds a lot, and it's going to cover up pretty much all of those beds along the Minutemen side.
They can work around that. It's not going to be an issue, I don't think.
Well, as far as light, and if you're going to have plants there that need sunlight, it's not going to happen. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's something that the landscape architect is going to have to look at.
Yeah, I'm not promoting, cutting down a 80-year-old oak tree. I'm just saying.
They like it for the sucking up water. Remember that was a discussion, like for
Right.
water runoff. It's a big thing we have flooding and stuff that the oak tree actually absorbs a lot as well. I think I remember that being in the first
Yep,
meeting.
that's-
There was a
It's
conversation
one
about
thing
that.
they say, in terms of BMPs and stormwater treatment, large woody vegetation such as oak trees and sea grapes, they're the only natural stormwater treatment that actually improves the time, because as they get bigger, they draw up more water. They do a pretty good job of taking up some of that water during storm events.
Okay. I think that's about all I had. Kenny mentioned the electrical outlets, and then we talked about it first. But just that foresight of, can this also carry on over to the sidewalk and into those flower beds that, at least on that side of the street?
So
with
basically,
this-
and again, not to get into conversation, but we could do those so they go on both sides. So they go to the street side and the inside park area that we're talking about.
Yeah.
That way, we've got them already built in better for vendors on the street.
Well, not just the power for that, but just the whole decor, the
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
thing. You don't want to go from the pavers we have to these brand-new pavers.
There could be a transition if nothing else. But that's going to be ultimately up to the five knuckleheads and whoever designs it. So we're giving them ideas.
Yeah,
As you well know.
I know. That's what we're going to do Tuesday.
Yeah.
But I appreciate what you guys have done. It's fantastic. So,
All right, thank you.
So I do have one more thing to add. Just to keep in mind, I would like to get 25 vendors in here that's what I get on your end of Minuteman, Tony.
Okay,
25 down
I'm
there.
just, and not to get into a debate or a discussion, but just to let you know, we discussed it, and our preference is that it continues on the street, and some tent
It's not
type
the city,
things
though.
can happen in there, but there's not gonna be food trucks or other things in there.
Okay,
Within the space.
because
But there
that
can
was
be
a,
some tent vendors and things like that, we don't know how many. But that's not, as we've discussed this multiple times, it's gonna be available for events, including Friday Fest, but it's not the priority of the space.
okay, I'm getting
Just to let you know.
two different stories, so I was just giving you,
Yeah, but we're gonna make sure it's available to use. I don't know if there's gonna be an exact number. Once they design it and everything, they'll be able to come up with that.
Well, the change was also when they moved this from last week, when they showed us how they were gonna move the stage and get rid of those.
Yes.
Originally, I think vendor trucks were gonna go in that like parking space that was gonna be dual use.
Right.
That was the discussion, but now that they've moved the stage and opened up more green space, obviously that's gonna have to be a change, because there isn't gonna be those parking spots for food
Right.
trucks, which will have to be taken into account if they're gonna utilize that.
Right, but there'll still be in the plaza area.
Yeah.
Be available for the tent vendors and things.
because I was told that that's primarily where the vendors were wanted to be and not be on the street, that they did
And
not want to close the
we
street off.
have, in previous meetings, both the audience and us have pretty much said, we want them to still be able to be on the street.
There
Just
will be a
like
certain
Tim was
amount, yeah.
talking, at some point, wouldn't it be nice to just close off that street and have that be pedestrian friendly? And I know some folks are gonna push back, but what an interesting concept, and what a great addition for businesses on that street.
Absolutely.
Well,
You
that's
know.
what the Zukovich report
Yeah.
suggested too, when
Way
they
back
came in.
when, 20
way
years
back
ago.
when.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Anyway,
All right, I just want a lot of electric in there.
yep,
I'm just saying.
yep. Walker, I hope you're.
Oh, yeah, no, it's good. You were good, absolutely.
Hi, John Lose. When I first saw the site plan of the City Hall and the green space, when I looked at the green space, I thought, wow, that's a really big space. We can do so much with that. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized is that space, it's going to be really easy to use that space up. In my mind, it's not the scale that I had envisioned. This is just my own take. So I think one of the hazards is when we put everything into the green space that we'd like to have, it's not going to be as big as we thought. But having said that, I wanted to make a couple of suggestions. I think it would be really special for the city if we could find a location to put a space artifact into that green space, something that harkens to our space history. We're the epicenter of space exploration, and we've been that since the 1950s, and it's not going to change. It's only going to deepen our history going forward. And I think if we had some kind of a legacy artifact on display in that green space, I think that would be a cool thing. There may be some things available that could be gotten from KFC, perhaps. And it doesn't have to be something that's huge. It could be a small item, but I think that would be pretty cool. Another thing, it's kind of a minor thing, but there probably should be an area carved out in the green space somewhere for flagpoles. And a lot of times there's more than one flagpole. Sometimes there's several flagpoles. There's a U.S. flag, a state flag, or whatever. So that takes up space. I only say that because if that's something that we're going to do, it carves out more space. The other thing is that green space. Everybody's looking forward to that to be a congregation point and a real show point for our city. And having really nice landscape lighting and architectural lighting really makes a space inviting. When you see an area that's lit up, that's green and well manicured, and it's lit, it's extremely inviting. And you guys have talked about that, but I'm just saying I agree 100%. Landscape and architectural lighting can really make that area pop. And on the final note, along that vein, is there's, at least in the pictorial up on the screen, there's trees that line the streetscape. And if they could also be lit, I think that would make the space really inviting. If you go to a lot of downtowns across America, Florida here, and all over America, the downtown area, the trees that line the streetscapes are generally lit. And that's where people that are walking, they're shopping for food or a store or someplace to go out for the night, and you're walking through a streetscape that has the trees lit. It's very, very comforting, and it makes you want to be there. And we have the opportunity to incorporate that into this plan. So I'm just throwing that out as another suggestion.
Thank you, John. Thank
Do we
you.
have as one of our bullet points landscape and architectural lighting?
Yes, let's make sure we do that. I agree. And I missed that when I was talking about lighting, but I think that's kind of what I was thinking, but I
I'm
didn't say
envisioning
it.
it too
So.
without
Yeah.
verbally saying it.
And then also, let's go ahead, and one thing I forgot that we had discussed, it was, and I'm just going to point for everybody's benefit, but since this expanded, whether it had or not, but right there is the firehouse. And we talked about some sort of landscaping to kind of take away from that, just that big building, that big wall. So some sort of high,
Some
thorough
trees back there
landscape,
might be
trees and
nice.
other things to basically kind of hide that a little bit, so we don't see that big ugly wall.
Soften that
So
facade.
Soft,
landscape
yes.
/ visual buffer.
Yes.
Between the green space
Crucial.
and the fire station.
Because otherwise, you're going to be looking at all this, and if you're inside the plaza area, you're typically going to be looking at the stage and looking that way, and it's like right there. So you're not looking at all the trees and stuff behind you as much, so you're not gonna have that on that one side. That, and then also, and I kind of like the idea, I don't know where, it may be outside, maybe inside, but I like the idea of the space item. Might not be a bad idea, might be a nice draw to figure
I
out
like
what
it
we
too.
could do and where it could be artfully and stylishly placed, if outside or near the building maybe, in one of the eaves or something.
Yeah, it could be very
I like it
Yep.
too.
attraction.
Yep.
So, and then, and I think also, just to make sure when we're talking about the electric, that we really stress that it needs to be thorough, professional, and probably both, if we did raised planters, I'm just gonna use this as an example, on both the inside plaza side, but also accessible on the street side. Because right now, I agree, the
Well, even if they
electric
don't-
on the street
yeah,
sucks.
If they don't even if they never close Minuteman as like a forever thing, when they do shut it down, you want to be able to
We're
utilize
still gonna
across the
use it.
space correctly.
And I understand, I don't know how effectively it's gonna be done to match what's already there, and honestly, what's already there, no offense to anybody, kind of, it's starting to look butt ugly. I think maybe at some point, whatever we do, if it looks really nice and is maintained, maybe we can get the street to come
Maybe
up
there'll
to
be a
that.
solution for
Expand that.
transition.
But some
Yeah.
kind of a transition where it matches, like, we've got pavers right now on the sidewalks. It might be a nice thing to have the pavers be able to at least transition into the plaza area, so it's not like boom, boom, totally different.
Right.
I don't know how to articulate that, but some way if we can make that a bullet point.
Yeah, I can add that in there.
I knew you could, Walker.
I like the curve idea. Obviously, like this is fine details, and we don't get a true say at the end. But with the Kelly Slater, with the like everything's very square over there. So the concept, if they could do something with a little curve to it, with the benches, even the bench in this is kind of nice with the overhang. However they do it, I think curve is cool. Is a cool concept.
I like it too.
Because it could be subtle waves or anything space related could have curves. So, but I think it should all be unison in there, but also not, like you said on the street, like not kind of hitting hard against like whatever's already there. Like flow nicely, but also break up the space where it's its own area.
Like there's this really cool design over here, and then there's the Minuteman streetscape over there.
And you know
There's
what?
a line right between
Honestly,
the two. Understood.
the street
I
side
want it to look
Yeah.
at flows.
could be flat,
Mm-hmm.
and then the inside could be curved, and you could still do your overlaps.
Yeah.
And it would, you just round off the edges on the edge of the flat, and that
Could
might
have
be a
both.
nice transition.
Yeah, and I definitely think safety wise, because I know it was brought up about like blocking off too much between the Minuteman side. I think it should match the other side aesthetically enough, but I think that more people are concerned about the A1A side as far as safety wise. People running across from, the parking garage or just someone playing in there. I know there's a concern about a kid running out there. So the idea of it wavy and kind of like got a little bit of it just makes it just less access, but still accessible. So I do like that
And
idea.
I think that end down by the parking garage needs to be, I think, in addition to that bullet point about that, is that needs to be better thought out to make sure there is a visual barrier.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, people are gonna be coming out of that parking garage and crossing A1A. They already
Yeah,
do.
exactly.
They're gonna do it worse, and so that end, that corner, especially because the stage is gonna be down there,
Yeah.
that's gonna be crucial to kind of block that off even more. And think about it, you don't really need to see anything right there, like you would from Minutemen, or either end of Minutemen for that matter. But right there, you need to kind of block it with landscape, wall, whatever, so it doesn't look
Bites them in the
as
right
accessible.
areas. Yeah.
I think that's really important. That's a good point. And I know somebody else was talking about safety, and I think
Yeah.
that's a good idea. So, talking about safety.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about it. I've seen other people talk about it, so I know it's a concern. And it is a long strip right there compared, because people were comparing like area 142 and how they have the rope, but we have a much longer strip right there on A1A than just that little corner.
Yeah.
Where people do tend to slow down on that side more than they do, I think, on the other, and I could be wrong.
No, you're right.
But I think right
so.
at that light, it's such a high traffic area, I think people do slow there more than the other side of A1A where there's not a restaurant right there, so.
If we're good,
Mm-hmm.
I think we should, one last round of public comment.
Okay.
And then
Yep.
we're ready to wrap up, right?
Yeah, yeah, that sounds good.
Anything else?
I have a comment. Leslie Cadlet's Cocoa Beach Main Street board member. The gentleman that came up before me who was talking about the flagpoles, I think a really great idea. If you did do the flagpoles, have it on the corner, on the outside, and have Kelly Slater moved in a little bit, so it kind of frames him and gives a little protection there from the road. You know, it's pretty substantial, those flagpoles, so that could help
Those
do
could
that.
be our bollards.
Yeah, that's true.
Have heavy-duty flagpoles. Great idea, thank you. Could we add that? I mean,
I'm not
I
opposed
don't-
to it.
yeah.
I think it's because like I said, we're all talking about pushing it back, and if you can kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah,
by
and
also
City
adding
Hall's
flags
gonna
into
have
it.
flagpoles
Yeah.
anyway, and they're
Yes.
typically gonna put them out front.
Yeah.
So rather than just have them on the side of the building where they don't even fit into anything.
Yeah, it
we
could be
could do this
designed
a little
really
more
nicely.
design-wise and come up with something. I think that would be actually kind of cool.
Okay. So flagpoles on the corner of Minuteman and A1A, and they would act as bollards and obviously a visual
Yep.
deterrent, and then Kelly
And the
Slater's.
reality is, if the legislature passes it, and it looks like they're going to, you're only gonna be able to have 3 flags. You're gonna have the US, the state, and I think POW. So that would be 3. So that would, artistically, it's an odd number. And then you could put Kelly right inside that, and that, I think that would actually be kind of cool. Good. Any other public comment? Okay, hearing none. If we don't have anything else, Walker?
No one else?
Call it.
I wanted to mention one thing I thought of, Kristen. I was thinking when we were considering some mosaics in the plaza, is we might think if it works with the rest of it, is that at the bottom of the statue of the surfer, we have, from the beginning, like the Ice Indians, and then we go up into the space, and then the very last one is actually people on the moon looking back to the earth. But we might think if they fit, maybe we could even make those as part of the mosaics. But it really depends on how the building's going to be, but we could at least think about it.
Okay, good. Thanks, Doc. We'll take a look at that again, and if we
It would
can,
kind of tie it together, but
yeah.
it might not work at all.
We'll certainly look at that. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Walker, you can wrap it up.
All right, I guess we'll call this meeting at 5:03 PM.
Wow.
Thanks, everybody, I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dr.
Bye.
Smallwood, bye-bye.